Welcome back to this series, deep diving into this amazing machine, the Slleio Espresso. So in the last episode, we explored the iconic Slleio shot, but this video and also the future videos in the series are really here to show you how powerful this amazing machine is and how it's capable of brewing in so many different ways. Today, we're starting with what I consider to be the perfect antithesis to the Slleio shot, but also a really nice complement to live alongside it, which we're calling the reverse Slleio shot. The inspiration behind the reverse Slleio shot was to create a perfect partner for the Slleio shot, utilising a completely different way of brewing and completely different principles, which not only shows the range of this amazing machine, but much more importantly, it gives baristas a really useful tool to have in their arsenal, which is going to get completely different results to a Slleio shot. As we demonstrated in the last video, which I'll link above if you haven't seen it already, a Slleio shot is defined by a long, extended saturation period with a restricted flow rate of water, which we call the pre-brew phase. In this phase, we're gently saturating the puck for around 20 to 30 seconds before moving to our full brew, full flow phase, where the incoming water bypasses the needle valve and we see the majority of the yield arrive in the cup. This can then be followed by a relatively short decline phase for the final part of the shot, where we move back into our restricted flow rate to finish off the extraction. The reverse Slleio shot essentially takes these principles, flips them on their head, and is a fundamentally completely different way of extracting espresso. So rather than the very slow saturation you see with the Slleio shot, with that very gentle fill, we're actually going to just have a short 5-second pre-brew phase in the reverse Slleio shot, followed by moving into our full brew position really quite quickly for a rapid fill, where we're just going to extract the first half of our extraction in that full brew phase. In a classic Slleio shot, you're going to get much more of the shot in that full brew phase, probably the first 2/3, maybe more, a little bit less, depending on how much decline you use. But then in the third phase of the extraction, a reverse Slleio shot will have a long decline phase for the second 50% of the shot, whereas a classic Slleio shot might just have a third of the shot in this position just to ramp down towards the end of the extraction. As you can imagine, these have wildly different results. So a classic Slleio shot I think is really useful for fine-tuning your extractions with very complex coffees. You can really delicately balance your shot, really pinpoint particular flavors and characteristics, whereas the reverse Slleio shot, this is totally different. Essentially, we're turning everything up to 11. Anything that's inherently in the coffee, you see loads of really high intensity, really jammy, really thick and sweet extractions, which are kind of a caricature of the coffee itself, whereas the Slleio shot is a little bit more precise, pinpoints exactly what you're looking for, and gives you definitely more control, but very different end results. With this in mind, for the reverse Slleio shot, I like to choose coffees that are inherently quite high intensity, quite big and characterful, maybe something that's somewhat process driven, maybe a natural or an advanced processing method. I think this is a really good way to highlight excellent processing and refinement, and it really turns everything up to full volume so you can get these really characterful, sweet and delicious espressos. Because we're creating these high intensity espressos, I wouldn't go with anything too complex here, too delicate, because you're going to lose some of the subtleties as we essentially turn up the volume with these espressos. And because we're achieving often quite high extractions with this method, I'd probably steer clear of anything that's too dark roast, so we're not pushing through too much unwanted bitterness in the shop. On a personal note, I absolutely love to brew naturally processed Ethiopian coffees in this way. It really takes me back to when I first fell in love with coffee. And we're just blown away that coffee could even taste like this. That big, ripe, fruity sweetness that you get from a naturally processed Ethiopian can really be highlighted using the reverse Slleio shot. So now we've got a basic understanding of the inspiration and use cases for the reverse Slleio shot. Let's set up to brew one. Something I really like about the reverse Slleio shot as that complementary antithesis to the Slleio shot is that the machine-based setup can be exactly the same, meaning you could have two coffees, one to be brewed as a Slleio shot, the other one to be brewed as a reverse Slleio shot. You could go from one to the other without having to change any machine settings, which makes these a really nice pairing to have in your arsenal. So just like in a Slleio shot, we're going to be looking in our pre-brew position for that 1.67 grams per second of water being delivered without any coffee there. This is restricted by the needle valve inside the machine. And then as we move into our full brew position, this is where the needle valve is bypassed. The water here is going to be delivered at around 9 grams per second, obviously with no coffee there to provide resistance. And just like in a Slleio shot, the pump pressure is set to a maximum of 9 bar. When it comes to choosing a dose in your basket, I do recommend leaving a little bit of headroom here. In that 5-second pre-brew phase, we're not looking to start saturating the puck too much. It's more just to start filling our headroom before we move into our full brew position, where we're obviously going to rapidly saturate the puck in our full unrestricted flow rate. As I mentioned in the last video, if you have a dry puck in your basket and you pop it into the group and it leaves an imprint of the screw from below the shower screen, your dose is probably a little bit too high here, so I'd recommend bringing it down slightly. I generally go for 18 grams in a 20 gram basket as a starting point. I personally like to use high extraction baskets whenever possible. I'm using the Weber Uni basket here, and this just gives us the chance to push our extractions as far as we can. And even at percentages of 22, 23%, I find very little bitterness in these shots. I think it's a really nice way of brewing espresso. You could also use a puck screen if you have one. Again, not essential whatsoever. You can still get great shots using standard baskets with no puck screen, but I just find this really helps with consistency. It also keeps the machine much cleaner than having no puck screen. So a nice investment, but entirely optional. And then the final thing you can do, although strictly optional, and if you are doing what I said earlier of brewing Slayer shots and reverse Slayer shots, I definitely wouldn't do this, but you can actually add a pre-brew timer in the barista dashboard, which essentially will automatically move from our restricted flow rate into our unrestricted flow rate. This is really easily done, only takes a second. Just go into your barista dashboard, swipe across until you find pre-brew. Set this to 5 seconds, press the circle, actuate to come out of the menu, and then your machine will automatically switch into the pre-brew 5-second phase, then after 5 seconds into full brew without you having to make that manual move. Later on in the shot, we can then move down into our decline, then off, essentially removing one step from the process and guaranteeing it's an exactly 5-second pre-brew phase. For the sake of the clarity of the demo, I am actually going to leave the pre-brew timer off. I just think this will be a better way to demonstrate exactly what we're doing throughout the shot. But in reality, particularly if you're only using this way of brewing, I'd absolutely recommend having it on. Gives you more consistency, one less movement, so it's a really nice option to have. So now let's go ahead and brew a reverse Slayer shot. Now we've got everything ready for our reverse Slayer shot, we can start to brew one in real time. So because I've only got 5 seconds to talk about the pre-brew phase, I'll quickly touch upon why it exists. If you just hit the puck straight away with your full unrestricted flow rate, I find this tends to bring a little bit less consistency, both in terms of extraction percentages and then our total contact times. So just having that very quick 5-second pre-brew with our restricted flow rate just allows us to slightly fill the headroom above the puck. Then we move into our full flow, and obviously we're going to be rapidly saturating the puck within about 10 seconds in total. So now we're going to see that 5-second pre-brew, starting here, 3, 4, 5, into our full flow. And now after 9 seconds, 10 seconds, we're fully saturated and extracting the first 50% of our yield in our full brew phase. Now we've reached 18 grams, or half of our desired yield. Going to switch back into our reduced flow rate for a long decline. I tend to go for that 5-second pre-brew, followed by another 30 to 40 seconds. And then I'm going to cut the shot for our target yield of 36 grams. So obviously you can go longer than a 1:2 ratio. You could go 1:2.5, 1:3, whatever works for you. I just find that 1:2 is a real nice sweet spot in terms of intensity, clarity, and also texture. So we can give this one a little try. The thing that always strikes me about these is just how punchy they are, the high intensity. This coffee, which is a naturally processed Ethiopian, I just find it's got so much sweetness, a little bit of booziness, a real nice jammy texture. It's got that really nice distinctive character you often find with a lot of Ethiopian coffees at its core, but then it's kind of wrapped with a really nice round jammy sweetness. Everything harmonizes really well. It's definitely punchy, brings everything up to 11 like I said before, but this is just a really nice expression of a coffee like this, which just has a little bit more process coming through and bags of sweetness. From a texture perspective, it's thick, it's syrupy, it's coating, it's got the most amazing flavor intensity, and when it comes to balance, this is a remarkably low bitterness shot, despite having an extraction percentage of about 23.5%. So I know what a few of you might be thinking. On paper, this does share some very loose similarities with the lever profile, but that actually wasn't the inspiration behind this at all. What we were trying to achieve here is to take the Slayer shot, flip it on its head, reverse it, as the name suggests, and intentionally switch between flow rates very consistently. So rather than having a long pre-brew, having a shorter pre-brew, rather than having a short decline, having a much longer decline. And the end result gives you a completely different characteristic to a Slayer shot, which is repeatable, consistent, and really easy to deliver over and over again, either manually using the brew actuator like we did here, or with a little bit of automation using our pre-brew timer. So stay tuned for more. I really hope you enjoy the ideas behind the reverse Slayer shot. I hope you give it a try if you can, and I look forward to hearing what you think of it. Stay tuned for more like this. If you've enjoyed this, you can subscribe to the Slayer YouTube channel by clicking up here, and we'll put the previous video about the Slayer shot here, and the next video in the series just here when it drops. See you in the next one. Thank you for watching, and enjoy your reverse Slayer shots.